This has been an amazing day and an amazing dialogue, and I just thank all of you so much for your full and frank participation. All of the questions that we hoped would be raised were raised today and discussed, and we certainly have a lot to think about as a community moving forward. So this session is going to talk about wrap up and next steps, and I don't pretend that it is definitive in any way. So I want to make that disclaimer right at the start. But this morning, when we started this meeting, I basically laid out a few objectives that I hoped that we would achieve today. And first, to present the outline of the project concept as it was being proposed by the leadership team. And I think we did that, and I think we got a lot of feedback that we really need to take into consideration. And the second objective was to stimulate free and candid discussion, which I think we accomplished. We will be revising a white paper that we have had underway for some time now, and we invite you all to participate as authors in that and to help us improve it. And so that is another objective that we had, is offering you all that opportunity. And then finally, really bringing the broader community in to generate more participation and support. So watch for a website launch in a little while. The meeting videotape will be posted on that website for public viewing, and a meeting summary will be distributed for discussion and debate. Some of the benefits that I heard people talking about today of this project was, seeding a grand challenge opportunity that might bring the community together in a way that will move this field forward and require us to think at new and unfamiliar scales, really challenge our imaginations. Also, to identify and develop new tools and technologies that will allow the benefits that we can imagine to be achieved. Raising awareness of the social and ethical issues. I think the two panels we had today were spectacular in terms of identifying the issues, framing them in different ways, and beginning a conversation that needs to proceed alongside of anything that we do with this project moving forward. And so looking forward to inviting you all into that dialogue and keeping that going. Attracting additional resources for this project. We've been talking a lot about paradigm changes in the way that we're living, in the world that we're living in today. There's paradigm changes going on in science, for example. The master apprentice type of a program is no longer necessarily the way big science is being done. It's being done in a multi-institutional way with large teams that communicate freely and make their output available. And so we need to think carefully about also how we fund this project, because the paradigm for funding science is shifting as well. It's no longer only being done by the federal government. It's being done from a variety of sources, whether it's private individuals funding science, whether it's foundations, whether it's some blend of academic, public, private, and industry belongs at the table there as well. And one of the interesting things that I think is important about this project is that the seed funding came from industry. And it was from a company that was using their imagination to imagine a new future for the way they could operate and the way the world could operate. And so for the companies that are here today, it would be really interesting to see how you see yourself in that framework. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But another benefit that I heard expressed today was looking beyond the human application. to how are the platform technologies that are developed here, how can they be extended to other areas so that we can feed, fuel, and heal the world. And I think that is enough to inspire all of our imaginations, and so that was something really wonderful that came out of the dialogue. Some of the principles that I heard some of you express in terms of what should drive this project forward is it should benefit humanity, right? It should drive innovation with collaborative projects. We should have an open sharing of information and constructs. Broad access to intellectual property, however we decide that should be defined and protected, and to address responsibly the potential risks and ethical implications of what we're thinking about doing. So that was just some of what I heard from all of you today, and we're all going to be taking that into consideration and hopefully engaging in a broader dialogue on those issues and principles with all of you. But ways that you can get involved right now is you can suggest new pilot projects, some of the pilot projects that were suggested today. We've heard that, they're controversial. They may not be the best to begin this kind of initiative with. So we'd like to hear of additional pilot projects, and we will set the website up so that you can submit your ideas and they can be considered and evaluated. You can join the conversation. So when the website gets up, sign up for project communications and participate in social media. Join a working group that will be announced, because I'm sure there will be lots of working groups organized around the questions that were raised today. And finally, participate in funding the project. And I was very gratified to hear several companies suggest that they would be willing to contribute to the effort. So in terms of fundraising, we have to think about this both in short-term and long-term goals. So the total cost of the project is not known right now, and I think for the long term, that's something that we need to work on as a group and come up with some kind of estimate that we will be able to discuss responsibly with funders, so that we can tell them how much money this is going to cost and how long it's going to take. And that obviously will come from a blend of public, private, philanthropic, and academic, as well as international resources. But in the short term, Autodesk put up the $250,000 of seed funding. If we want to continue to move this project forward in the way it has been moving, and it's gaining a lot of momentum and strength, then we need to have some matching grants to that initial seed funding, so that we will be able to organize the working groups, continue to support the meetings that we're holding, bring in additional people for dialogue, and begin to define the ethical and public conversation, the educational components of this project, and other things. So that's a planning effort that I think will take quite some time, maybe a year. And that will require some additional short-term funding. So I would ask that you consider that. So immediate next steps as we're leaving tonight is for all of us to consider the questions and issues that are raised here today, to think about how we develop governance and organization based on the best practices that we heard from SC 2.0, and there are other large-scale scientific projects that we need to look at, to learn from and to apply lessons from, and establish working groups that might consider some key questions such as, and this is not a definitive list by any means, but just some suggestions. How do we structure the organization, its project review processes, and funding mechanisms? How do we interact both operationally and contractually with academic research centers and with industry? How do we engage and create a dialogue with the public? What are our milestones, metrics, and assessment mechanisms for moving forward? What are the first pilot projects and how are they chosen? How do we raise the funds that we need? Those are just a few of the questions that I think we need to consider in the next several weeks as we think about moving forward. So thank you all for a very successful meeting. Thank you, Andrew, Jeff, George. It's really been a pleasure working with you and being part of this whole process.